All right, so we're going to continue. We left the video off with this police. Well, there's many costumes calling themselves police. And then we're going to discuss a little bit more about the people, and then we're going to get into the head of state and possibly some of the branches of government. We'll see how we go for time. All right, here we go.
Get paid to do.
So you agree with me, but you get paid to do that, so you stand on that side.
I'm trying to talk to you the way I'm talking to you, as opposed
Exactly,
to...
because you're doing what you're getting paid to do, not what you stand in, and that's why I disrespect you.
All right, so just a short little refresher, and then we'll get straight into some of the terms here. So now we're going to go, still finishing off on the people, we're going to go into the term rights. We hear that said a lot. I remember Dan Andrews saying that, you know, you don't get rights. Rights are less important than, you know, this is about your safety, right? It's a famous saying, I think it was Thomas Jefferson, don't quote me, something to do with if you choose safety over your liberties, you'll have neither. And that's self-evident right now. So let's go with what rights are and why you don't have any. According to Dan Andrews, the term rights is rooted in knowledge of natural law. Rights are actions that protect all aspects of one's integrity. So that word integrity, just to give you a better understanding of it, actually comes from the word integer, which is a mathematical term, and an integer is a whole number. So integrity means to be whole, right? And so anything that penetrates that integrity, right, that's a violation of your wholeness. So that can come from, you know, 4 different ways that I know of. One's through the physical realm, you know, spiritual, the mental, and there's one more I'm missing and I can't think of right now. Physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, right? So those 4, they're all ways that your integrity can be penetrated, right? And so rights are the right actions or knowledge of the right actions needed to preserve peace and harmonious coexistence of all life. So when he says that your rights are less important and your safety is more important, that in itself is a contradiction, right? Because what is safety about? Is it not about preservation of peace? Is it not about harmonious coexistence? Well, you can't have that unless your rights are preserved first. There is no safety. And so this is just showing he's running off the ignorance, people who ignore knowledge are ignorant of the people, which has been made, been made to be that way. So, you know, he knows, he's a very, very clear understanding of how to manipulate people because he knows they have lack of awareness, and that's why they're easy to manipulate. So we'll go back to that screen where there's the head of state. I'll just move this one out of the way and then we'll get into the head of state. So let's just move that there and so I can see it. So we've got the people who are equal to the head of state, right? This is all about what the rule of law is. So who is the head of state? They're still a man or woman. They've just taken a job, I guess it's a job really, to occupy the highest office in the land, right? So the people created a system where they created a government, which is an administrative body, and they need something to be, or someone to be the head of all that, right? To be in charge of administrating that whole function, that whole structure. And so what they do is that head of state needs to take an oath, right? And they need to be someone of high integrity, right? They cannot be compromised. So the people, the whole way it was structured is the people would elect someone they believed to be of that higher integrity, they could trust to actually protect and serve their sovereignty, right? So I explained what sovereignty was. That's pretty much what they're doing, right? Is to protect it. And the head of state, it's like an office that acts as like a vessel, which holds the people's sovereignty and it holds their assets, and it actually helps administrate them so that people can have their needs for equity and harmonious, peaceful coexistence met. That's what the people agreed to, right? So that's what the role of the head of state is, and that's why they take an oath, and that's called the coronation oath, because we in Australia are under the constitutional monarchy system, right? In America, they're under what's they're called a republic, which their head of state is the president. Well, we have the head of state, which is a monarch, right? And that term is false in itself because they're not a ruler. That's incorrect. they're just an occupier of an office. So as soon as they start throwing those terms like monarch, that's when our consciousness gets subverted and we start believing they have some kind of divine special, rights that were granted to them by whoever that knows better than everyone else, right? So that's how the deception is done. It's done through language, because it creates a perception of like a legitimate authority, which they don't actually have. They are someone who can get out of the office just as quickly as they can by the people. And the way they do that is by breaching that coronation oath, right? And in that coronation oath, they actually swear to protect the laws of God, right? And what are the laws of God? They're the same as common law, So that's, the common law laws, no loss, create no loss, no harm, keep the peace, and commit no fraud, right? So those 10 laws that are in the commandments, or the 10 commandments, they can be condensed down to that. And so the head of state, their role is to ensure that is always preserved, right? And then they have control over what we call government, right? Which is divided into 3 branches. So here you can see the legislature, which is the Senate and the House of Reps. So I'll see if I can bring up a slide to explain why government was created. So let's see if that's come up. All right. So why was government created? To administrate the will of its creator, which is man, in order to secure and protect the property of man and organise the infrastructure, labour and services necessary for peaceful, dignified coexistence, and to collect and distribute resources equitably for all people to share in and enjoy the abundance of life on this planet, right? How many of us can honestly say that that is our experience of government? I really struggle to find one, right? So even before this COVID stuff hit, you'd have people, talking about how poor government is, right? It's because they never acted within their function. They haven't since we've been alive. People who are alive today. I'm willing to stake anything on that one. And so that's the actual intended purpose of what government is. And so now we can see just how far from that they have actually moved. All right, so let's get back into that head of state image. Move that one. So as you can see, maybe I'll bring up one more of what government can do actually. If I go to share that, what can government do? So this just gives a little bit more clarity. Government can create a set of rules termed legislation that govern its behaviour on how it conducts itself, a fiction, right? So they are an artificial body that was created to provide a service, a function. And that was administrating the will of its creator, we the people. Legislation deals with the temporary. So it's only to do with how it carries out its function, which is not permanent, it's temporary. And the thing about government is in our monarchy, what's it called? I've just lost my thought. In our constitutional monarchy, it actually is written that no government can bind its successor. So all these bits of legislation it creates, no future government that comes after it is actually accountable to that. They can change it, but you notice they never do. Funny about that. So it's there to deal with the temporary. Therefore, it can be amended or repealed. Where law, like we made really clear in the first video, it's something to do with permanent. So anything that's to do with permanent, it cannot be changed. So we cannot change the fact that we feel that how we have an innate sense of justice and injustice. We can't change that. That's just there. That's permanent, right? So laws are to do with that. What governments do is just their function. And now you think about what legislation has been used to do, and it's far exceeded that. It's being used to actually create slaves, and that's what we have today. And that's the sad part of all this, is that how it's all to do with knowledge and how little knowledge people have about who they are, because they've never been taught and they've never been given definitions, and that's been on purpose, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't have good slaves. So maybe we'll go into who actually makes law. Let's go into that. So we can, as far as in the human realm goes, here in the physical realm, who makes law? So it's the people who make law. And it's not through government, but through the trials and tribulations of everyday living, which is permanent, right? So everyday living is permanent. It happened before us, it'll happen after us. The people make law through the conduit of their conscience. That has an innate understanding of the system of dynamics required to live in peaceful and prosperous coexistence. So, you know, same overlapping themes, it's always there. So that law is always to do with how to live peacefully in coexistence with one another, you know, and to prosper. That's the whole reason why we make law, is things that we're going to agree to, that we understand innately, of how we're going to function in a way that's enriching life, not just for ourselves, but for all. So that hits about the 10-minute mark there. So we might just stop it there for now, and we'll carry on with more about the judiciary, and hopefully get some time into the executive as well. So we'll leave it there. All right.